Welcome to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And good day. Thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time as we give you truth in today's world, helping you live God's word in today's world when the headlines hit home. And so we're thankful that you can join us. And I want to first thank our sponsors before we head off into any conversation and I get lost. Christians for America. Christians for America, Don Swarthout with that ministry. We thank them for partnering us almost from the very beginning. They have been a good sponsor, a good friend to us. We thank them for that. We thank them for their work. Don has reprinted his book, The ACLU's War with America. It's a great book. I'm going to see, I've said this a couple weeks, I'm going to see if we can get that available to our listeners somehow, either on our website. I don't know how we do that, Ryan, or how we can work that out, but we'll talk to Don and see what we can make happen. A book probably written before his time, as many of those things we've seen continue. We've just talked about the Knoxville incident, the Veterans Memorial, people actually wanting to give in without even a fight, so much to keep our First Amendment rights, to honor our military, and to honor the God who has blessed and protect our military from the beginning of this nation. Before this nation started, George Washington was praying over the troops, and how dare anyone want to take away from the blessings that we have so enjoyed. It's like enjoying a good meal and then refusing to pay for it. We have been blessed. We've been blessed from the beginning in the creation of this nation, and to now deny that is just can't be done. And if you're going to take away that freedom, what more would you allow to be taken away, especially without a fight? So we thank the folks in Knoxville for continuing that fight, electing people who will stand and stand to fight. But we come back to our sponsors, Crave, ChristiansForAmerica.com. We thank them for standing with us. Crave, Christians reviving American values every day. And also we thank Webcast One Live. If you're listening, 10 a.m. live on Wednesday, Webcast One Live Studios. We thank them for partnering with us. We also thank 99.3. The Truth Network. It's just a joy to be on that network. I was listening to some of those shows on the way into the studio today, and what great teaching. David Jeremiah. You cannot go wrong with David Jeremiah. And actually talking on hearing the voice of God. I know that's a question for many of you. For all of us, it should be knowing distraction from direction. And so if you're just wondering about that, maybe you can go back and listen to some of those teachings of David Jeremiah on this week's 99.3 Truth Network that we're airing. So we're going to jump to our first guest. He's been with us before, and I'm so honored that he'll take time to come back with us one more time. It is Veterans Day today, 11/11. It is Veterans Day, and we take time out to honor our military. And I am only too disappointed with myself for not continuing the Veterans Memorial event that Concerned Women for America has done in years past. And I tell you what, I won't neglect it again. We will see what we can do to bring that back. 500 to 700 people coming together just to thank their neighborhood, their community, individuals who they did not even know sometimes were heroes across the sea in World War II. Ended up when we would honor our veterans, we had 3 different veterans, I think, that had books written about what they had done over the seas. Martin Schneider had been sunk on 2 different ships in 4 days and survived both. Del Pyle, I don't know that we had a book about him, but he had been the first one in to rescue the folks in Dachau, liberate those victims in Dachau, those prisoners. And not prisoners, I mean, they had done nothing wrong, but they were captive. And then, of course, Glenn Madole. Glenn Madole, Last Man Out was the name of that book. And he was at Palo Death Camp. He had survived the Bataan Death March and the Corregidor Death March and was at Palo Death Camp. And he would tell you he wasn't surviving the Bataan Death March, but he was on the other side of the ocean, the island, doing heavy duty, and he missed it by God's design. But they operated on him without anesthesia, took his appendix out. There are several other things he could have told you about, and he did at our veterans events. And so that book is called Last Man Out. Today, our guest is Colonel Ted Spain, retired, and he has written a book called Breaking Iraq. We've talked to him in the past about that book, The 10 Mistakes Made. Today, we're going to ask him a variety of questions as we do celebrate the men and women who have given their all, who have signed. They've signed on the dotted line to protect this country at all cost. So we thank them, our military, our law enforcement, and even those first responders. Those folks who head into danger when the rest of us head out. Those who leave their job, leave their house each morning, not knowing if they will return. And for the soldier, how much more when they leave months at a time, sometimes several trips out during the young years of a childhood. This is something that cannot be regained. So we thank those men and women for everything you have done for us, and you have served us, and now we honor you. Colonel Ted Spain, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
I appreciate everything that you have done. Now, you are officially retired from your military capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
But you are still, I think, doing contract work in various areas. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I'm actually sitting here in Los Alamos, New Mexico, preparing to take over the security contract here for the lab, and it was 15 degrees wind chill out there this morning.
In New Mexico?
In northern New Mexico. Quite cold. We're up here on top of the mountain.
And that's the storm that's heading this way. They're telling us to batten down the hatches, bring in the small things that will blow across the lawn. So they're acting like this is going to be a nor'easterner here in Iowa. So you've already got it, 15 degrees. And wouldn't you know it, the one time I actually got some of my fall decorations out, my Christmas decorations out in time, I'm going to have to go get them back in before the winds hit if it's really going to be that bad. Is it windy there?
Very, very windy. That's what's causing the cold weather, is the heavy wind blowing on top of the mountain. We're 7,500 feet in the air right now.
So here in Iowa, if you're listening on the live broadcast, there's your warning. If you're listening on Sunday, hope you survived it. So, Colonel, thank you, one, for your service to our country. The book that you wrote is available. Is it available on Amazon?
Yes, ma'am. It's Amazon and some of the Barnes & Nobles and other bookstores. But yes, ma'am, it's on Amazon.com.
And just a touch base, it was not a tell-all. You weren't pointing fingers. You were just saying from someone who was on the field, here's what we could have done better. Is that correct?
Well, yes, ma'am, especially myself. I believe I was more critical of myself than anyone else because I sure wish there was a lot of things I could have done differently.
So if I do a search right now on America and the Middle East, in fact, I'll just do that while we're sitting here. What's going on? The Iran deal came down, and it was, in my opinion, a horrible deal. I guess I'll just ask you first. What was your opinion of the Iran deal?
Well, my opinion, don't know that it matters a lot, but my opinion is a bad deal, and because it just kicked the can down the road about 10 years. My understanding is that Iran supposedly getting rid of a lot of their centrifuges. I believe it's like 19,000. They're going down to 6,000. But you remember the old trust but verify. I believe, and arguably Iran is the biggest threat to our nation right now. A lot of folks are worried about ISIS. I think when you look back in history, ISIS will just be a blip on the screen. But Iran is who we need to be very careful about.
I think you're absolutely right. We know that they are the largest state sponsor of terrorism. And in this deal, 100 to 150 billion with a B will be released. Those are not sanctioned funds. Those are frozen assets. So those will just be free in Iran. Going back to Iran, the sanctions themselves will be relinquished. And what I am told through this deal, they will not be able to redo sanctions. You cannot, through this deal, you cannot place new sanctions. It says we will not interfere with their commerce. So we cannot just re-sanction if this doesn't work out. So when you hear candidates saying that, be weary. It's not that simple. And also, it says in the deal that we're not just allowing it, we're blessing it, that we will allow or we will protect their cyber, I don't know what the terminology I'm looking for there, but, basically that if any country comes against them with a cyber attack, we will protect them. Well, Colonel, the country that would likely do that would be Israel, correct?
Well, yes, ma'am, and that's exactly what you got to watch for 10 years. Israel just simply cannot allow what I believe is going to happen over the next 10 years. Their existence depends on them taking out any type of improvement. But the Iranian influence, I personally witnessed the Iranian influence even back during 2003 when we first invaded Iraq, in the way that some of my soldiers there towards the end were victims of IEDs that were being manufactured and brought in from Iran. So it's kind of ironic. Last week was the 36th anniversary of them taking our hostages in Iran. So They are not our friends. I don't think you'll ever be able to trust them, and we just need to make sure we don't take the eye off the ball. The media has moved to other things. If you notice, not a lot in the media much about the Iranian deal, but that is something that I believe that we will regret. That I'll live to regret that in my lifetime, I believe.
And so you're talking about the hostages 36 years ago. I did not hear anything about this in the media. No,
it was November the 4th. Last week was the 36th anniversary. I was very much affected of that as a young company commander at Fort Bragg. When they had the hostages, we trained to invade Iran to free the hostages. And of course, you're very familiar with what happened with Desert One, and that was certainly not a fine day for our military. But the bottom line is you're just not going to be able to trust them. They are a bigger threat than what the media would lead you to believe.
Absolutely. And when you say Desert One, not a great thing for our military. For those who are young, for those who have been in the public schools and not gotten history, explain Desert One not being our best day.
Well, it was really one of the first lessons we learned about. There was the different services were doing their own thing. The Army does their thing. The Air Force does their thing. We didn't really have a lot with joint warfare like we do today. I believe it was the two C-130s that collided out in the desert. In fact, you may recall, it was just within the last month, so Jimmy Carter was being interviewed, and they asked him what his biggest regret was, and he mentioned Desert One as the biggest regret in his lifetime. But the military certainly shares the blame for that, and it was so much service dispersion back then, and I believe we have improved and gone a lot ways, made a lot of improvement in that. And I saw that during the ground war. I was extremely impressed with all of the joint operations that we had during the ground war in 2003.
Okay. So come forward to today. We're talking about the Iran deal. We're talking about the situation in the Middle East. What do you see for us right now as Americans?
We better watch out for Russia's influence on Syria. That is very scary to see what's happening. And I used to say, a couple of years ago, I would say, my enemy's enemy is my friend. But I was wrong about that. Yeah, and that's what you're going to see. I'm afraid what's going to happen with the fight against ISIS. Your enemy can be your friend, but they're still your enemy. So our enemies are not going to change. The Sunnis and the Shia have been fighting forever. Now you got the Shia influence there. They are Iranian fighters that are in Iraq right now fighting, and in some cases we're doing some joint operations against ISIS. The media has seized on ISIS, and the media has got the American people afraid of ISIS. But ISIS is certainly not a big threat to the United States.
Really,
but Iran is.
Yeah, because ISIS is the one that even the candidates, it's all seemingly politically correct for them to all come down on ISIS.
Well, here's the thing. ISIS is winning the PR campaign. You look at the videos. I watch the videos that they post. They're very frightening. It scares the American people. But ISIS will be eliminated. The leadership of ISIS are some of the same ones we were fighting. As you'll recall, when they were two huge mistakes I talk about in the book, when we disbanded the Army in Iraq, that was a huge disaster. And then when we stripped out the top three levels of the Ba'ath Party, that was a mistake. So a lot of the senior fighters for Saddam are the people that are leading ISIS today. The other thing is, as you've seen, is in some cases when the Shia take back over towns that ISIS have taken, they commit some of the same atrocities that the Sunnis did. One of the things that I learned the hard way, and they tried to explain to me when we first took Baghdad, was that all they understand is force. I had senior Iraqi people telling me that you Americans are too nice to us, and we don't understand that. And they've been fighting for years and years, and you just don't go in and change that overnight.
I think that's absolutely true. I think many of us have missed that on a variety of levels. We as Christians, we're a Christian nation. We want to apologize. We want to ask for forgiveness, and that's a sign of weakness for many. We want to try and get along. That's a sign of weakness to an enemy who has no intention of getting along. You hear the music. We've got to go to a break, but we'll be right back with Colonel Ted Spain on the Middle East, what's happening right now, and information you need to know. Stay tuned.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Rock and Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And this is Tamara Scott. Thank you so much for staying tuned with us today as we bring you truth and help you when the headlines hit home, helping you live God's Word in today's world. Joining me is Colonel Ted Spain. He is the author of Breaking Iraq, The 10 Mistakes We Made. He's retired, but he's also still involved in the contractual work, and many of you know how that goes. But it's Veterans Day, and I just felt it was appropriate to talk with a veteran and honor those of you who have served. Thank you. Thank you for your gift to us. And to remember those who gave their all. We just must never forget the price that has been paid. And this is why we have to understand immigration. We can't just give away the protections of our liberties, the security we have as a sovereign nation, that men and women have died and given their all to gain and protect for us. Can't just give that away. Those people lost their right to vote. Those people lost their all. Can't give it away. They earned it. Our ancestors earned it. And so just to have someone walk into this country illegally and say, I deserve it, we need to help those people correct what's wrong in their country. Because if the able-bodied ones who leave their countries in these times of unsettled or rifts or civil issues, then you leave the weak to be dominated by dictators and corrupt leaders. You need to leave these people in their countries and help them stay there and right the wrongs, or those wrongs come here with them. But it's not just a gift we can give. It was earned by those who served in the military. And so joining me today is Colonel Ted Spain. Colonel, thank you again for your gift to us in your service to our nation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you honoring the veterans. I would tell you that without question, the greatest highlight of my life was leading those soldiers in combat. And I would tell you, for all your employers and your small business owners that are listening right now, give these veterans a chance. You hear about the work ethic, but what I've learned now, being in the corporate world for 10 years, what the military veterans are going to bring to you, they're going to bring the work ethic, but they understand time management. They pay great attention to detail. They can not only be good leaders, but they can be good followers, and that's important in the business world. And the last thing I would tell you is that they are very proactive as opposed to reactive. And in the corporate world, those skills, all those things I just mentioned, are lacking in the corporate world. So please give those veterans, give them a chance, hire them if you can.
And do you keep in contact with the men and women you led?
Absolutely. This morning I got tremendous amount of messages from Facebook that just people I've served with in various parts of my career. I'm still in touch with some of the families of the 13 soldiers that just as you just said, they gave everything. They gave everything so that we can just live in freedom that sometimes a lot of people take for granted. And we talk about veterans, but we also have retirees out there. Only 19% of people that join the military stay 20 years and get retirement. That other 81%, they'll stay from 3 to 10 years. They leave. They don't have any savings. They don't have anything to start fresh with. I think the military is trying to correct that with some type of 401k type retirement. But for those of us that have retired, a lot of our benefits are being eroded. You're very familiar with what's going on in the VA, and that's a shame about the way we're not taking care of some of those veterans, some of which were serving with me, some of which that lost their arms and their legs, doing exactly what they believed in. And a lot of them are just young men and women. I told a congresswoman that was asking me some questions in Baghdad, and I told her, I said, hey, I'm almost 50 years old. I've lived my life. I've raised my kids. But I says, half these soldiers that are serving with me right now are less than 25 years old, and they got their whole life ahead of them. And every one of them had their reasons for joining the military. But the fact is, when their nation needed them, they were there, and I saw bravery and heroism like I can't even describe to you the things that I saw, because they just believed in what they were doing, and then they're just not being taken care of in some cases.
What can we do as a people? We hear this discussed, and oftentimes, unfortunately, it's been politicized. It's used by politicians in their campaign speeches. But what can we as a people do to make sure that this is corrected?
Basically, obviously, voting is a key piece, but I think the bigger problem is just a general disconnect. Most people don't understand that 70% of Americans, 70%, that's a high number, are not either physically or mentally, they don't qualify to join the military mentally or physically. So you've got that 1% that's protecting that other 99%, and there are so many Americans that love the military, they appreciate the military, but you just can't. They can't relate to them, and I just don't think they understand what they're going through when you're trying to adjust. It's very difficult to live in a combat environment for that long and then adjust back to peacetime. And they're just struggling with that, and they need the Secretary of the Veteran Affairs, McDonald, was on Fox News this morning. He was quoting a bunch of numbers from his talking points and stuff. But the folks that I talk to out there, they say it's not getting any better. If for your listeners, if you want to humble yourself, just go to a VA hospital. Just go walk the hallways. Walk the hallways of a VA hospital, and then you'll see what people have done to pay their price for our freedom.
Is that something we can do? Can
Absolutely.
We as civilians, we can just walk through?
Absolutely. I would say call your local VA hospital. Just go out there and just talk to them. Just talk to the people that are in there. And it just means the world to them. I mean, bring them a bag of cookies. Bring them something. And unfortunately, so many of them don't have family members and stuff. And there's a lot of homeless veterans out there. It's really a shame. Of course, obviously, I'm very biased because I spent the best years of my life with those folks, and I saw what they did, and I saw them answer the call. When their nation needed them, they were there.
Many of you may know folks in retirement centers and nursing facilities who are also veterans, and of course, you can go and visit them there as well. But I had not thought of just walking through the VA, although I will tell. Okay, so two things. So if you're listening, folks, this is my challenge to you. If you're interested in doing this and you don't know how, or you don't want to go by yourself, you can get in touch with me. Truth for Our Time is the Facebook page. Truth for Our Time is the Facebook page, or you can email us at info@tamarascott.com. info@tamarascott.com. We will see how we can make this happen. We will see what we can do. The second point I was going to bring up, in D.C., one of the things I not often, but sometimes get to do when I'm there is stop in a couple of shops that I've come to love, and one is a consignment shop. Here's why I like it. Inga, who works at the consignment shop, donates her paycheck to the Wounded Warrior Project. And here I am talking to this little lady, I don't know, in her 70s maybe. She is a neuroscientist, not a neurosurgeon, but a neuroscientist. And in her work, she has met many of these military men and women who have given so much and come home wounded physically, missing limbs, unable to drive an ordinary car, needing special homes. She has, with her paycheck, bought them vehicles, helped purchase homes. I was so impressed by what one woman could do. Now, many of you may not be able to do that, but as Colonel Spain has said, you could probably bake some cookies and take them to the VA. You could probably go and visit someone in a nursing care facility. And don't forget the younger men and women who are coming home in their 20s trying to re-assimilate. It is a busy, knockdown, drag-out world here in America. And we don't give them time to at least even reflect and wade through what they're dealing with. I would tell you, and I don't have any proof of this, but I think post-traumatic stress syndrome is, not only has it lately been named, but I think it's much greater now than it used to be. And Glenn Medola, one of our World War II soldiers who I've interviewed several times before he passed away, I asked him about it, and here was his response. He said a couple of things. I asked why that we didn't hear about this so much with World War II. He said a couple of things. Obviously, it hadn't been named, but we just didn't have men and women struggling like we do today. He said, one, we knew what we were doing. We knew what we were doing was right. We knew the evil over there, and we knew it was so wrong, so bad, that we knew what we were doing was right. Two, we all had a faith in God, each and every one of us. Some were different, some were less, some were more, but none of us questioned God and his existence and his protection and direction we all sought. Third, when we came home, we didn't have the media second-guessing us and people taking us apart. They cheered us. They respected our work. And even if we'd made a mistake, they understood the heat of a battle. I thought that was fairly well said for a question that I asked in the middle of an interview. So, Colonel Spain, I thank you for reminding us as what we can do. It's not, I've interviewed Lieutenant Colonel here in Iowa, the first female Brigadier General, actually, Jody Tymason one time, and I was asking her, you know, we're going to the mall, we're going to the movies, and you're all over there fighting a war. We act like we don't even know it. There's no rationing, not like World War II. And her response was, this is the way it should be. When our military is running well, we keep war, we keep threat away from our shores.
Absolutely. And I would throw in one thing. I would tell you, for all the Korean War veterans and especially the Vietnam veterans that are listening right now, they have never received the credit that they deserved either.
Well, you have challenged me again. I don't know if you heard me say CWA, Concerned Women for America, which I know you know Terry Bartlett.
Absolutely.
His wife is very active with Concerned Women for America, and we in this state have done a wonderful presentation to our local military men and women and veterans, and so you have challenged me, and I will not let one more year go undone. We will return to that, and we will honor our veterans as they should be honored. So I thank you for that. As we were talking, you had just brought up the Russian threat. What, you know, we hear that they're moving into areas, countries, but now, as you say, we see them coming in the Middle East, where we used to turn to America.
Oh, that's exactly right. Anytime you create a vacuum, somebody's going to fill that vacuum. And that's what happened. Once we pulled out of Iraq, history will look favorable on us pulling out of Iraq. We created a vacuum, and you see who is filling that vacuum. Iran's filling it. Now you have the former Soviet, because I believe that's what Putin would like to see, the Soviet Union come back, but you got the Russians going into Syria, allegedly fighting ISIS, because that's a common enemy of ours, but in fact what they're doing is they're helping Assad. You'll also recall one of the biggest mistakes we made was drawing a red line and telling Assad, if you use chemical weapons, you know, we're going to take action. He used chemical weapons, and we didn't do anything. That's an example of what I was saying about the culture there in the Middle East. They have no respect for weakness. They only respect strength. And that was not a fine moment for our country when we got caught bluffing Syria. So now, once again, you got Russia coming in, filling a void. So, the reason my book was named Breaking Iraq is because General Powell said, if you break it, you own it. So we broke Iraq, we owned it, and we left them. And if you're not careful, we're going to do the same thing in Afghanistan.
And boy, does that leave a bad taste in the mouths of everybody over there. We just can do so much better than that as a nation. Ryan is our next guest. Do you have after the break, we'll bring on our next guest. Okay. And that is Pastor Stephen Khoury, who is out of Jerusalem and building a church and he's been spreading the gospel at his own peril, suffered physical violence himself. His uncle was martyred for preaching the gospel. He'll be joining us after the break. But, we are going to break. Colonel, we got to let you go.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And happy Veterans Day to everybody out there.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work?
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
I am Tamara Scott, and I'm mad at myself for not getting to say goodbye to Colonel Spain more properly. Love the heart of that soldier. Love the heart of that soldier. You can tell he loves his country. He loves the men and women who served under him. And the book is called Breaking Iraq. I would encourage you to check that out. As you can see, and the one thing I remember from the book, it was written so someone like me who's never been in the military can read it and understand it very easily. It is a fine read. But I would have loved to say goodbye to him in a more proper manner. And I'm so thankful and grateful for the work that he's given, the service he's given to this country. But the challenge is ours, folks. What are you going to do for a veteran today? Boy, that really brings it home, doesn't it? It's been so hard on families. How many do you know that are no longer with their spouse, that have lost time with their children? Those, as Stan White, whose children came home and were on antidepressants because of the military, forced to take the antidepressants because of the military, and lost their lives because of the antidepressants. Some of them fell asleep and never woke up. It wasn't a suicide. They just too much in their system, is what we can guess. He's still researching, is finding that out. Just the impact, physically, emotionally, mentally, traumatically, spiritually. We need to pray for our troops. Joining me, do we have Pastor Stephen Khoury? He is from holylandmissions.org, out of the Holy City. Pastor Khoury, thank you for joining me.
Tamara, thank you so much, dear. Appreciate what you do to take a stand for the gospel, to take a stand for what America really stands for. That's a Christian, Judeo-Christian values.
I am so glad you could join me, and thank you so much for that encouragement. But when you're talking about taking a stand, no one knows that better than you and your family. You were born and raised where?
I was born in Jerusalem, and I grew up in the city of Bethlehem. And I tell people, my childhood wasn't the average one. I've never, as far as back as I can remember, I cannot remember a single day without sensing, feeling war in some capacity in my life. And that does something to human being. And thankfully to me, what it did is made me realize how short life challenge people, life to the fullest, and honoring those whom you love next. Because you can be here one moment and gone the next.
Pastor Khoury, I so love your passion, and I'm so pleased that we can Skype. At the same time, the wires are there's a lag there. So what I'm going to have is my producer call you very quickly, or you can call the studio number 515-244-0077. He's calling you right now. So folks, if you're listening, we will get Pastor Khoury right back on the phone line, because I don't want to, I hate missing any time with him. I want you to hear his story. He's actually going to be here in Des Moines Friday, November 20th. Friday, November 20th. You can go to presidentialfamilyforum.com, presidentialfamilyforum.com. The family leader is doing their annual family forum, and this year it's presidential. Candidates are coming in. They'll be discussing the issues around a table, and you'll get to hear personalities and see things that you don't get to see in the debates, which last night's debate was excellent. My hat's off to the moderators for being mature adults and actually talking about the issues. How wonderful it was to see and allow our candidates to rise. My prayer for all of them was that each would do their best and have their finest moment. That's what we need. I'm not against any of them. I want to know who is the best to lead our country. But before that forum takes place, Khoury, Christians United for Israel, will be holding a pre-session from 4 to 5:30. 4 to 5:30, and this is all at the Community Choice Credit Union. During that time, Gary Bauer, who is the National Director for Khoury Action, they're starting a lobbying arm so they can actually put some weight behind good politicians and some accountability towards those who are not behaving as they should when it comes to blessing Israel. We as a country have the call from Genesis 12:3 to bless Israel, and we know when we bless them, we are blessed. When we curse them, we are cursed. It's just that simple. And the founding fathers knew enough to put in our Declaration or Constitution? Oh my goodness, that we will support nature, God's law and nature's law. I think that was in the Declaration. Check me out if I'm wrong. Let me know. Either way, it'll be good for you to check out both of them yourself and read them. But he will be here from 4 to 5:30. Stephen Khoury will be talking about what's happening in Israel, what he's facing as he spreads the gospel. It gives us a bit of hope that the gospel is being spread over there. So get your tickets, Presidential Family Forum, and we'll give you the link to that. We'll put it on at tamarascott.com. We'll get it on there sometime in the next day or so for us, the family leader. But make sure when you go to that Khoury session, you get a voucher for food, and you get a voucher into the presidential forum itself, which will cost you otherwise. So another great benefit of attending besides the blessings you'll have. And also U.S. Senator Joni Ernst will be joining us to talk about the Middle East, the Iran deal, and what's going on over there with our nation as far as foreign policy and our national sovereignty. Pastor Khoury, I hear you're back.
Thank you, dear Tamara. I'm back. And I don't know if you're able to hear my earlier comment about growing up in a war-torn country. I tell people, I haven't known a single day in my life without sensing war in some capacity. That usually does a lot of negativity to a human being. But thankfully to me, what it did is it made me realize how short life is. And my challenge to people always is to live life to the fullest, honoring God first and those whom they love next.
So you learn to fear God more than man. And so when we talk about what you have witnessed over there, you lost an uncle who was martyred because he was spreading the gospel?
Uncle George was a 6'6", 300-pound monster. That's what we called him. Because he was an angry man with no anger management program. He was an antisocial guy, and he's just one of those unique guys that he was happy being alone. And he was my father's oldest brother, and we drove to the Mount of Olives to spend some time with him, to invite him. I remember we knocked on the door to St. George's, a 3-day conference in the Galilee. Would you like to go? His first question was, is there free food, and do I have to pay? He was a very scary man. And you have to understand, my father, who I write about him in my book, he's beaten, he's been shot at, and, only a few times in my life I saw my father get scared, and one of those few times I was inviting Uncle George to this conference. Long story short, Tamara, is he gets saved at this conference. We come to Jerusalem, and he asked us to start a church in Jerusalem, which we called Calvary. That was church number 4 that my father and our leadership team started during that time. And Mark 8 is really what he loved, this verse, Tamara, which says, if any man that hangs on to his soul, any man that lays down his life for another will gain it. We never understood why he loved that verse, but the more we get closer to his last days, we started to understand that God put that verse on his heart for a reason. You see, what happened was he was having lunch in his house, and the frantic knock on the door came, and it's people saying, let us in, let us in. His neighbor, a blind neighbor, they're trying to take his house by force from him. And they said, George, let us in. And Uncle George let him in. And when he walked out of his house to talk to those fanaticals in Jerusalem, this is a gang of around 7 Muslims. When he walked out to talk to them, they beat my Uncle George with a metal rock on his head, with a metal pipe on his head. And he lost his life, and he was called a martyr because he was willing to act out Mark 8. And his death, martyrdom, started a revival in Jerusalem. But the revival was such a big threat, Tamara, that actually caused us to shut down our property. We got pushed out of that rental property. And then July 6, 2004, I came back. I restarted Calvary Church, the only Bible-believing, pro-Israel, Arab-Israeli evangelical church in that part of Jerusalem. Since then, we're being kicked out of 3 rental properties. And today we are battling for the biggest battle since Paul's day, and that's fighting for the church in Jerusalem.
So I want our listeners to understand, your uncle was murdered. You yourself have been beaten. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and I'll be sharing these personal stories at the pastors' leaders meeting and at the Khoury meeting on the 20th when I join you all along with the U.S. Senator. And
we've given that information to our listeners. You can go to the Family Leader or to thepresidentialforum.com and get your tickets there. I'm hearing the music. We've got to go to a break. We'll be right back after these messages. I hope you'll stay tuned with Stephen Khoury and hear his courage in Israel and why we need it here in America as well. 99.3 FM.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And I am Tamara Scott. If you're watching live on Wednesdays, we thank you for joining us. You're seeing me put myself back together after my short conversation with Pastor Khoury during the break. So appreciate the hearts of our guests today. I'm just so honored to even get to talk with these gentlemen, and just thankful for the opportunity. We thank Webcast One Live and 99.3 FM both for making these things possible for me to bring these folks to you, and you get to hear them as well. Pastor Stephen Khoury, we were just talking about your courage. You have suffered physical harm. Your uncle was martyred, and you face, like as you said, folks don't even want to rent to you because of the risk.
You know, Tamara, it's being a part of changing the world comes at a price. Sometimes it's your health, sometimes it's your security, sometimes it's your future, sometimes even your wealth. And I think that is a reality that I am encouraging the believers in the West, specifically America, to get back to their first love, where they are doing everything they can to ensure that the message of the Bible, our Judeo-Christian roots foundation, is not only stable, but growing and expanding. And in our church in Jerusalem, what we're doing, we are at the premise of fighting for a lighthouse for the end time. And literally, that's what we are, sister. Within 14 years, being pushed out of 3 rental properties, they found our weak spot. Our weak spot is they go on to the landlord, they tell them, if you don't kick us out, we're going to burn your property down. And then the landlord, who usually is a Muslim or a Catholic, Greek Orthodox, even though Muslim landlords, they like us a lot. We pay our money, our rent way in advance. They like us, but they have to ask us to leave because of the pressure from the community. So we've made a decision that renting is a Band-Aid solution, but at the same time, we need a place in Jerusalem to be a lighthouse, to put a stake in the ground, to be a lighthouse in the community. And that is right now what we're doing, is we're fighting for a property. God gave us somebody willing to sell us his building, which is something that will host the Jewish community, a Muslim community, and an Arab community. We're right smack in the middle. It's a beautiful location. Why is it beautiful? Because of the surroundings of the 3 people groups within a 5-minute walk from us. Right now we are campaigning and asking Christians in America to pray for us, to support and stand with this called Save the Jerusalem Church campaign, which people can actually visit our website, our 501c3, and they can look at this more on the website to learn more how they can help save the only, I want to say that again, Tamara, the only Bible-believing evangelical church in that part of Jerusalem that is preaching the gospel, sharing love of Jesus Christ, sharing the love for Israel, for the Jewish neighbors. And that's why it's important that we are planted there permanently to tell the community that we're there for good, to share the message of Jesus.
So we thank you so much for your courage, and we stand with you in that. And so, folks, you're hearing it right there. And the name of the website is Save the Jerusalem Church. Was that .org?
It's holylandmissions.org, and that's the campaign. Save the Jerusalem Church campaign. It's on our website, holylandmissions.org. And if there's a time for Christians to stand with Israel, this is the time. If there's a time for Christians in the West to stand with the body of Christ, the only other time, Tamara, where a cause like this that we know of was brought to action was in parts of 1 Corinthians and parts of Romans, where Paul goes to these areas and challenges believers there to support the persecuted believers in Jerusalem. And 2,000 years later, the irony is I'm doing it again in the same way, traveling and asking people to find me a place to sleep. That's what Paul did. He asked people to prepare a place to hang his cloak, which basically a bed to sleep on, and to prepare his writing. And the phenomenal part about this is Americans, my challenge to America right now, besides, of course, considering being a part of this campaign, which really we need by December the 31st, my challenge to the American listeners right now, regardless whether you're a pastor, a business person, a lay person, a retired person, or a senior citizen, regardless, to be a part of changing the world comes at a price. To be a part of changing America, it has to come with you taking a stand for what you believe in. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, which are the three Jewish prophets in Daniel 3, they stood up, and God did the rest. That is what we have to understand. God is just looking for warriors, for prophets to stand up. And when we stand up, he does the rest. That is my challenge to you, and that's what I'm going to be touching on when I'll be speaking on the 20th.
You're absolutely right. And here in America, we don't yet face the physical harm that you have endured and your family has suffered. But we often face the ridicule, the social media persecution, those who in the LGBTQ movement are so hostile towards anybody who speaks out on biblical principles in that area. So we often get ridiculed. And so for us, let me just say, to really be used, if you will allow yourself to be made a fool in the eyes of man, then you will be able to be a powerful tool in the hands of God.
Amen.
Yeah. If you'll be a fool in man's eyes, you'll be a tool in God's hands. It's that simple. If you're doing it for the right heart, right reasons. And right now in America, you're right. We have the ability to stand without bloodshed. We do. It's getting riskier. But if we don't now, Churchill, we just interviewed one of the authors on the book, God and Churchill. His quote is much longer. But if you refuse to fight when you have every chance of victory, you will at some day fight when there is no chance of victory, because death will be no worse. Think that through, folks. Stephen, we've got just a minute left. What would you say to just 2 minutes left. What would you say to our folks?
Well, here's my challenge, Tamara, is it starts with an attitude heart. The American culture, the American DNA mentality, which is something the world envies you for, is the attitude that the sky's the limit, nothing's impossible, and the attitude is that we can make life better for mankind. Once you begin to lose that parameter, once you begin to lose that DNA, which the world wants you stop becoming the greatest nation on earth. And this attitude that I just said, some of the DNAs, are not something that you, the American people, created. It's something that you built on the biblical Christian foundation. And the amazing part about this, the world hates America for its biblical Christian foundation, but they love your fruits of the Spirit. The world does not know that your fruits of the Spirit are because of your Christian root foundation. Whenever you take a stand and sound the trumpet that our roots are our Judaic Christian foundation, and that is why you are who you are today, because of God's grace through your roots. So it takes simply standing up. A lot of people ask the pastor, "What do you do? How did you get through your beatings? How did you get through going to tough areas, to Gaza and Jenin? And how are you able to stand to rebuild a church in Jerusalem after being kicked out of 3 rental properties? And you want to purchase a property in Jerusalem? How do you keep going?" It's simple. You run to God. Absolutely. And you stand up. When you stand up with the attitude of God, I want to make a difference, God is looking for people that he can use. You have to be willing to stand up and say, "God, here I am, use me." And that starts by you running to God. When you run to God and you say, "God, use me," it starts with that action. Look what's happened with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and of course, many prophets. A great way to end our show. Pastor Stephen Khoury has been my guest. You can see him the 20th at the Family Leaders Kufi pre-session. You've been challenged today. You have been challenged to stand. You've been given information. Be encouraged and never be complacent.